Thank you for inviting us back to update you on our experiences in Palestine and Israel. And we'll verge a little bit into what's going on in Gaza these days. Last week, Myrna and I were shocked at the news from Gaza. I'm sure we were all shocked, but we should not have been. This is not something new. It did not suddenly pop into existence last week. It's been decades in the making. The unfolding horror in Israel and Gaza is an escalation of decades of state-sanctioned violence by Israel against Palestinians. Right off the top, Myrna and I condemn the horrific actions of Hamas against Israeli civilians. We likewise condemn Israel's unbridled bombing and cutting off of access to all basic needs, including food, water, electricity, and medical care. Attacks on Palestinian and Israeli civilians, or any civilians, are repugnant and are war crimes, no matter who does it. This morning, we're going to give you a review of our experiences and then look at Gaza. Just to remind you, we visited the West Bank and Israel back in 2013. In October, that will be 10 years ago. Hard to believe. Let's begin by refreshing our memories of the historical background of this conflict. We'll look at a short video. The video was produced by an American Jewish group called Jewish Voices for Peace.
What would happen if you built a refuge for a persecuted people in a place where another people already lived? In the next few minutes, you'll learn why this moral quandary is at the root of the struggle between Israelis and Palestinians, and what you can do to help achieve a just peace for everyone in the region. First, there are a couple of things it's helpful to understand. One, many Jews fled harsh persecution in anti-Semitic Europe, especially the Nazi Holocaust. Zionists encouraged massive immigration to historic Palestine, at that time a British colony, where Jews had an age-old connection and where small Jewish communities had long existed among larger groups of indigenous peoples. But when the UN offered the Jewish immigrants the majority of the land for a new state called Israel, for the indigenous Palestinians who lived there, it was a massive destruction of life. They rejected the UN's partition plan, and several Arab states invaded the new state of Israel. Israeli forces essentially erased over 400 Palestinian villages and towns. By the end of the fighting, Israel controlled 78% of historic Palestine. And when 750,000 Palestinians who fled or were expelled during fighting tried to return to their homes where the new state now stood, they were permanently barred by the Israeli government. Well over 100,000 of their relatives and neighbors who hadn't left became second-class citizens of the new state, along with the new Jewish majority. Today, Palestinian refugees and their descendants number in the millions. Most are in the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and Jordan. Many are spread throughout the world, with millions still living in refugee camps, seeking to return to their homeland. To sum up, one group of refugees found a much-needed home, but in the process, a new group of refugees was created. Here's the second thing to understand. Israel was founded as a Jewish state, but now ask yourself, what exactly does that mean? People had lots of ideas about what a Jewish state should look like. Some called for equality for all citizens. But what was created in practice was institutional discrimination against non-Jews. In other words, Israel ended up being built on a blueprint of exclusion. The Israeli government wants maximum land and resources for Jews, but not the Palestinians living there. That's why inside Israel, Jews get special privileges, including rights to land and housing that are denied to the Palestinian citizens, who make up 20% of Israel's population. That's also part of why Israel has never defined its borders. In fact, they still hold on to land, the West Bank, and Gaza that they conquered in the war in 1967. Since then, Israel has built Jewish settlements throughout the occupied West Bank, building Jewish-only cities and supplying them with infrastructure like roads and army camps, schools, and even a college. Military occupations are meant to be temporary, but after 40 plus years, this one looks permanent and entirely unjust. In the West Bank, Israeli Jewish settlers and Palestinians live on the same land, but must live under two completely separate and unequal systems of Israeli law. The Jewish settlers dominate the natural resources, including water and agricultural land, and they're backed by the Israeli army. To maintain the occupation, Israel has demolished thousands of Palestinian homes and orchards, confiscated Palestinian land, bombed a captive civilian population in Gaza, and punished resistance with raids, arrests, and assassinations, all to gain maximum land while making life so difficult for Palestinians that they will either leave or be too afraid to resist. Palestinians have fought back. For decades, they tried to achieve national liberation through armed struggle. Some groups still do, but the majority now support popular protest instead. The deeply harmful pattern of control, repression, and violence profoundly harms Palestinians living under occupation and Israelis living as occupiers. This must be broken to reach a peaceful and secure future for both peoples. Now that you understand the problem, what about the solution? What about peace talks? So far, over 2 decades of US-backed peace talks have actually made things worse by helping Israel continue the occupation. It's been years of talking while Israel massively expanded the Jewish settlements and literally redrew the map. Peace talks are good if they're real, but not when they're theater to cover a land grab. So now what? The current world superpower, the United States, has been a terrible friend, enabling Israel's destructive and self-destructive expansion onto Palestinian land by funding the Israeli military, the biggest recipient of US foreign aid in the world. But there's another superpower that can make the difference: you. There's a movement with hundreds of thousands of people just like you across the world, including Palestinians and Israelis, protesting, educating, divesting, and boycotting, all to bring nonviolent international pressure on Israel to stop violating human rights of Palestinians. Throughout history, where governments have failed to push for justice, people just like you, like us, have taken the lead and won. Now it's the Palestinians' turn for freedom and justice. We can pressure Israel to end the occupation and the discrimination. We want all people, Jews and Palestinians, to have equality, human rights, and democracy. We can change history. Join us.
Just a second, folks, till we get this thing moving again. Okay. Let's look at the situation. Just how big is this area we hear so much about, and we're going to talk about this morning? We just take a look at the slide here. If we remove Cape Breton and the Isthmus of Chignecto from Nova Scotia, we will get an area equivalent to Palestine, Israel. However, Palestine, Israel has over 12 times the population. The recent history of Palestine and Israel is shown in the panels on this slide. Prior to World War II, land ownership in Palestine was roughly 6% Jewish and 94% Palestinian. As illustrated here, Jewish settled areas are shown in white and Palestinian in green. At the time of the UN Partition Plan of 1947, Jews represented 33% of the population, The UN plan proposed giving the Jewish population 53% of the land as a Jewish state. The Palestinians, who made up 67% of the population, were given 47%. The State of Israel was created in 1948 and immediately was followed by the war, in which over 700,000 Palestinians became refugees, driven from their land. Many of them went to Egyptian-controlled Gaza. In 1967, Israel invaded the West Bank and Gaza. Israel has retained military control of these areas ever since. The Israeli military and Jewish settlers continue to take over Palestinian territory in the West Bank. Today, only small islands shown in green of Palestinian territory are left.
On this stolen land, the Israeli government builds lovely new homes and then provides subsidies for Israelis to live in these homes. When you enter these settlements, you go from a brown desert to a green oasis as the settlers live a European or North American lifestyle, consuming tremendous amounts of water. When we hear in the news that Israel has built another new settlement, that settlement could hold 80,000 Israeli settlers. We aren't told that these lovely Florida-like cities are built on the land stolen from Palestinians. The military and settlers push Palestinians off their land and build 8-meter-high walls around these cities and connect them together with Jewish-only roads built on still more stolen Palestinian land. Here is some idea of the scale of the wall around Bethlehem. We spent the 2 weeks sitting, talking, and eating with Palestinian people aged from 4 to 93 years old. The gentleman shown here actually participated in the 1948 war, and his grandson had just been released from Israeli prison. We discovered a people with more courage and stamina than you could ever imagine. People who have suffered under 65 and now it's 75 years of ongoing oppression. A lot of their strength comes from their attachment to their family history and the connection to their land. They talk of their land and its olive and almond trees as being sacred. They talk of themselves standing firm like a tree with its roots anchored in the sacred soil. Palestinian Christians talk freely of Jesus' message of living in peace, of loving their enemies, and at the same time, peacefully resisting the actions of those who are preventing them from living life in all its abundance. In spite of everything, these people believe that one day justice will prevail in the land they love and cherish. We visited and shared a meal with the Sababa family. Here, Myrna and 4-year-old Rihanna greeted us at the door. They, like us, want to have a nice home for their family. Samer The husband, a machinist, has his own shop handed down from his father. Myrna is a social worker, and they have two little girls, Selena, 7, and Rihanna, 4. We realize that they are now 17 and 14 and wonder what they've been through in the last 10 years. Rihanna and Selena are delightful children who soon warmed up to us. Selena started giggling, drawing little cartoons to show us, and then displaying her writing skills in both English and Arabic. She was very surprised that we could not speak, write, or read Arabic. On the surface, everything looks fine. A lovely, friendly couple and 2 beautiful children. However, when we look closer, things are not so rosy. There are 2 levels to their home. The first level is where Samer grew up. When he and Myrna married, he wanted to build a home on his father's 6 acres of land, but was unable to get a permit from the Israeli government because he is Palestinian. So he built on top of the home his father had built. Though the house is on 6 acres, Samer cannot build anything on the property, nor can he grow anything. Just a few feet away from his property is a military tower where the armed soldiers keep an eye on the neighborhood. When we were there, they took us around at the back of their yard, and there was, thinking of how demoralizing and intimidating that would feel, day in, day out, lying in bed at night, knowing there are armed soldiers overlooking your yard. Palestinians are faced with intimidation, bullying, threats, inhumane laws, belittling comments and actions every day of their lives. Travel is very difficult. To go anywhere beyond their neighborhood in any direction, they run into a checkpoint. And these checkpoints are inside villages and between villages. At last count, there were over 100 permanent checkpoints, floating permanent checkpoints, and at any time, there are hundreds of floating checkpoints. These floating checkpoints can pop up anywhere and may or not be open. It's like we're in a big jail, Samer said. When they get to a checkpoint, because they are Palestinians, they will be harassed, humiliated, ridiculed, searched, questioned, made to wait for hours, especially if it's raining or unbearably hot or cold. Then they could still be denied passage. If you are Palestinian, it could take you hours to go, say, the distance from Moncton to Riverview. Palestinians walking through permanent checkpoints must endure the belittling experience of being herded through very narrow passages like animals going to slaughter. Can you imagine children having to go through checkpoints to get to school. How frightening that must be. There's not much sense in trying to plan your day because not getting through a checkpoint successfully means not getting to school, work, visit family, to the doctor, not even to the hospital, even if it's an emergency. Imagine being in labor and not being allowed to get through the checkpoint. Babies have been born at checkpoints. Mothers and babies have died. Home demolition is another means Israel uses to demoralize Palestinians. The Israeli government will simply demolish a home. The children come home from school and their house is in ruins. Can you imagine the terror and the panic they would feel? Where will they go? What will they do? Where are their toys? Living under the constant threat that their house will be demolished is one more way that the Israeli government and army makes life totally miserable for Palestinians. It is a fact that the Israeli army is targeting children. The army takes children from their beds in the middle of the night, arresting them on trumped-up charges, intimidating and threatening them, trying to force information from them about their family or friends, and severely punishing them if they deny the charges or won't give out the demanded information that the army wants. When we asked Samar, why not sell your land to the Israelis and leave the country? Canada's crying for machinists and social workers. He replied that this is his family's land, and this is his country, and this is a human rights issues. And he and other Palestinians are not going to give in. In spite of everything, Palestinians believe that one day justice will prevail in the land they love and cherish.
Thank you, Myrna. Let's take a look now at Gaza. I didn't know how to introduce this section, so I typed "beautiful Gaza" into Google, and up came thousands of pictures. Here are just a few of them. Put them in your mind beside the devastation you have seen in the last week. Dream of what the world could be like without the warmongers. One thing that will shock you is that Gaza is so small. It's a tiny strip of land along the coast, 41 kilometers by 6 kilometers. Comparing it to PEI, the two maps are the same scale. PEI is 16 times the area of Gaza. If we laid, and there are over 2 million people living there. We in PEI complain sometimes about the tourists in the summer, but it gets nowhere near that. If we laid Gaza on the ground in Moncton, it would almost reach Sackville, New Brunswick. This map shows the cities and refugee camps in Gaza. Refugees make up 67% of Gaza's population. Many of them are there because of the ethnic cleansing by the Israeli military during the 1948 war. Egypt is hesitant to allow Palestinians out of Gaza because the Egyptian government knows that the Palestinians will never be allowed to go back. Israel's built a fence around Gaza. The fence enclosing Gaza is 6 meters high and goes down who knows how far. The fence is patrolled by Israeli military. Stepping inside the no man's land can get you shot. A few years ago, we attended a presentation with a young woman, Eva Bartlett, who worked on a farm in Gaza. And she had video of the Israeli military shooting at her and other farmers as they tried to harvest their crops. We were shocked as the women walked towards the Israeli soldiers with their hands raised, bullets hitting the ground all around them. This was a game for the soldiers, but life and death for the harassed Palestinians. To reinforce the fact that Gaza has been under siege for so many years, we really didn't know what to do. So we're going to show you a list of what's happened since 1948. In 1948, thousands of refugees fled Israeli military and entered Gaza, which is under Egyptian control. In 1967, Gaza was conquered by Israel during the Six-Day War. In the peace settlement of 1973, Gaza was not returned to Egypt when the Sinai is returned. In 2005, Israel removed all Jewish settlers from Gaza. In 2006, Hamas wins most seats in parliamentary elections. Later that year, in 2006, Israel bombs Gaza's sole power station and launches Operation Summer Rain, which claims the life of more than 457 people, a quarter of them children, and injures over 1,000. In 2007, Israel declares Gaza a hostile entity and imposes severe restrictions on the movement of individuals and the entry of gas and electric supplies. In 2007, Israel's High Court rules that limiting fuel and electricity supplies to Gaza is in accordance with Israeli law. In 2008, Israel launches a 5-day aerial and ground attack on Gaza, Operation Hot Winter, killing at least 110 Palestinians, including 26 children. In 2008, Israel seals all border crossings and prevents all humanitarian aid from entering Gaza. In 2008, again, Israel launches Operation Cast Lead, which included deaths of 333 Palestinians. Sorry, I can't read what it says on my screen. Which included, there's no laughing matter, which included 330 children and 114 women. I think it's 1,300 and something Palestinians. They injured over 5,300. Shockingly, in 2012, Israel calculates the minimum number of calories needed by Gaza residents, and then uses this to determine the quantity of food allowed into the Gaza Strip. Israel launches Operation Pillar of Defense, killing 162 Palestinians, injuring 1,300 others, and destroying 200 homes. Okay, hopefully you can read what's there. I can't read it because there's something on my screen. In 2015, the UN warns that Gaza could become uninhabitable, but by 2020, due to the ongoing development of the Strip. 2021, Israel launches an 11-day attack on Gaza, killing 254 Palestinians, including 66 children, and injuring 1,948 others. And earlier this year, in May, Israel launched a 5-day military campaign on Gaza, leaving 33 Palestinians killed, including 6 children and 3 women. Let's look at a short 2-minute video from CNN, which summarizes the history of Gaza.
Gaza is only about 25 miles long and 7 miles wide, but this small strip of land is one of the most fought over in history. It was an Egyptian base, a royal city for the Philistines, and the place where the Hebrew hero Samson, betrayed by Delilah, met his death. Since then, much blood has been spilled. The most recent contest for Gaza began at the end of World War II, when persecuted Jews travelled to Israel from Europe looking for a new start after the horrors of the Holocaust. In 1947, the United Nations created a plan to split Palestine into 2 lands, one for Jews and one for the Arab people. Backed by the US President Harry S. Truman, David Ben-Gurion, Israel's founder, proclaimed the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. Egypt then attacked Israel through the Gaza Strip. Israel was victorious, but Gaza remained under the control of Egypt, and an influx of Palestinian refugees began. In 1967, war broke out between Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. In what became known as the Six-Day War, Israel seized the Gaza Strip and held it for 40 years. Israel pulled its forces out of Gaza in 2005. In 2006, Hamas, a group sworn to destroy Israel and listed by the United States, the European Union, and others as a terrorist group, won a landslide victory in Palestinian legislative elections. Hamas was now in control of the territory. However, Israel still controls much of the area's access to and from the Gaza Strip. Since then, Israel and Hamas have been exchanging blows. Israel maintains that Hamas is a violent terror organization, while Hamas says that they represent an oppressed people being victimized by the Jewish state. The international community continues to press for a cease in violence, but for now, the Strip's population of 1.8 million people are trapped in the crossfire.
This is Raya, and excuse the pronunciation, Raya Hallis. She's director of the Gaza Training College under the United Nations Refugee Works Association. In this little short, really short video, Raya pleads for help for the people of Gaza. There are more people than their organization can handle. They have no resources, no food, no water, no medicine. Myrna and I discussed including this video since she's speaking in Arabic with subtitles, but we think it'll give us an insight into how Palestinian emergency and aid workers are coping.
الوضع اللي احنا فيه الان لم يمر ولا يوصف باي لغه من لغات العالم قادر توصف الوضع اللي احنا فيه. 15 لاجئ فلسطيني موجودين هان، اجوا تاركين بيوتهم، تاركين اكلهم، تاركين شربهم، مرضى سكر، اطفال، عجزه، رضع، حتى لو في حدا منهم في بعض الاطفال مصيبه الجدري، الكباسيتي او السعه تاعت الكليه لا تتسع لمثل هذا العدد، سواء على صعيد الاغذيه، على صعيد الخدمات، الحمامات، على صعيد المي، على صعيد الكهرباء. شويه حتقطع الكهرباء، حنقعد مش عارفين نشوف الناس، مش عارفين نلبي حاجاتهم. انقذوا غزه، ارجوكم انقذوا غزه، انها تموت، انها تموت، انها تموت. هنا الأطفال، الشيوخ والكبار لا أستطيع أن أقدم لهم أنا وهو. لو أنا مديرة هذا اللواء ولا أستطيع أن أقدم لهم أي شيء، لا أكل ولا شرب، ما فيش ولا شيء ولا شيء. عمالنا بندور على حدا يطعميهم ويشربهم. أجوا معهم مش شيء، هم مش شحادين، هم معهم فلوس بس من وين نجيب؟ من وين نعمل؟ من وين نجيب لهم؟ فعم بدنا لأنسولين، ناس بتموت بدها أنسولين مش قادرين نوفر لها شيء. هذا وضع كارثي كارثي.
Many innocent people have been trapped by the Israeli closing of the borders. Here's one small girl, Miriam, a British Palestinian, who had just come to Gaza to get to know her extended family and have some fun. And now she's trapped.
Hi, I'm Mariam, and I came from Britain, and I came to visit Gaza to just like have some fun and see my family. So yeah, I just went to Gaza and I sat at home for a while, only for a couple of months now. And then I like at Saturday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. to find that there are a lot of bombs and people are dead. I'm like really in fear. And like every time I just have to have the thought of me dying in a bomb in Gaza, like it's not a good thing. Like every place I go run away and I just find bombs and I find dead people. And like maybe one day I'll end up like them, but it's a really scary thing for me.
So where is the hope? Boy, this has been a downer. Where is the hope? There's hope in Charlottetown, believe it or not. We had a vigil not this long ago with over 100 people. And boy, that was great for Charlottetown. There's hope in the media. There was a time not too long ago when this would not have been printed. It was in the Charlottetown Guardian. I'm sure I'm just having a bit of a problem here with my text. And I'm sure in many other papers. This I took out of a video from the Times, New York Times. There's hope in Washington, D.C. This is a peace rally organized by 5,000 American Jews calling for a ceasefire, organized by Jewish Voices for Peace in Washington, D.C. These are Jewish people opposed to the Zionist brutalizing of the Palestinians. Believe it or not, there's hope in the UN. A motion to call for a ceasefire in the Security Council last week. 12 people voted yes. 12 countries voted yes. 3 abstained and 1 voted no. It's just too bad that the one that voted no had a veto. There's hope in Moncton. You folks are so brave to invite us here, but Myrna and I know that you are brave on many fronts. Keep it up. You are the hope. The hope for an end to this and all wars lies with you and with Myrna and I, with us. We will make a change. We have in the past and we will in the future. Just quickly, what can we do? The best thing you can do is learn the facts. Learn more and talk to your friends. Here are some reliable resources that Myrna and I have used over the years. Are these resources biased? Oh, for sure they are. You know, they're biased towards justice and peace. In the long term, or the short term for that matter, you can participate in the international boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, the BDS. It worked in South Africa, and it will work in Israel. So thank you folks so much for this opportunity to share with you. And it was really great. Thanks so much. And I'll turn it back over to whoever is in charge here.